Okay, so we have finding a percent as a proportion. What is awesome about what we are about to do is we are really just going to be combining information from our brain that we already know. We already know how to set up a labeled proportion, which is what we're going to be seeing today. Just a matter of figuring out what the label for our part and what our label for our whole is going to be. And we already know something incredibly important about percentages, that percents are out of 100. So we are going to be working with part over a whole and a percent over 100 in today's little setup. So I think it's a little easier when we are working with a word problem to determine what our labels are going to be. The ones that might be a little wonky and a little weird are questions that are set up like this one. 12 is what percent of 25? But we come back to the same premise that we're talking about a part and a whole. So even if we have weird words like is and of, we're still talking about a part and we're still talking about a whole. So for example, 12 is what percent, 12 is what part of the whole 25. So I can even look at this and turn it into a little ratio table. We've got it labeled is and of, a part and a whole, and then we're just matching stuff up. 12 is some percentage, our mystery number, of 25, and then we keep it simple. There's nothing fancy. Going from what we know to what we don't. We get from 25 to 100 by multiplying by 4. So 12 times 4 is 48. Percents are out of 100, so we have 48%. And that's reasonable because 48% is pretty close to 50%, which is 1/2. And 12 is pretty close to half of 25, just a little less. Okay, then we have our next question is a little scenario. In Miss Laster's class, 12 out of the 25 desks have a wobbly, with a Y, a wobbly leg. What percentage of the desks have a wobbly leg? So again, we come back to that notion of part and whole. What part of the desks are we worried about? What portion of them? We're concerned about the ones that have a wobbly leg. Out of the whole, the total, all the desks. All desks. How many of them wobble? 12. The total, 25. We're being asked to find the percentage, so this needs to come from our brain. Percents are out of 100 total. That represents the whole, that represents all of them. And then to solve it, nothing new. Go from what you know to what you don't. Really just working with equivalent fractions. So 48 out of 100 gives us 48% that have a wobbly leg. Okay, even our next one. 5 is 20% of what number? Ooh, I love when we have percentages because I just have to make sure it's what I need, and then boom, I can write it down at the snap of a finger because we know that percents are out of 100. So immediately I've got 20 out of 100, and now I can move on to the rest of my numbers. 5 is 20% or a part, so 5 is a part. There's my part on top of what number? So that would be my whole. That's what we're trying to figure out. Again, go from what you know to what you don't. How do we get from 20 to 5? We simply divide by 4. So 100 divided by 4 gives us 25 total. Then we would apply the same concept to our little word problem. So Jake is just starting to play t-ball. He hits the ball 20% of the times he swings. So immediately I'm thinking, okay, well, he doesn't hit it very often. So I'm going to use that information to maybe check for reasonableness later. If he hit the ball 5 times, how many times did he swing? All right, start with our labeled ratio table. 20%, our label is hits. Our part versus our whole. He hit the ball out of the total times he swung. So hits and total swings is what I'm going to use. And I know that 20% represents hits, which matches up with our table. So that means 20 over 100 because percents are out of 100. If he hit the ball 5 times, 5 times, he hit the ball 5 times, hits, 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 we're just matching it up. And then our question is asking how many times did he swing? So I can even double check that that is the mystery number we need. And then we can solve it. Go from what you know to what you don't. To go from 20 to 5, we simply divide by 4. And 100 divided by 4 is 25. So this kiddo had 25 total swings. And out of those, he hit 5 of them. There we go. All right, our last basic one. 40% of 60 is what number? As soon as I see 40%, I'm thinking, boom, 40 over 100. And our percentage fraction can come first, it can come second, that's fine. We just have to make sure that we are matching information up with our labels. 40% of 60 is what number? Of is going to represent our whole. So there's 60. And then I'm looking for this mystery number up top. All right, so go from what we know to what we don't. Can I get from 100 to 60? Maybe if we can figure out the decimal to get there, but there's not a regular number to get there. So then maybe we try vertical to get from 100 to 40. Also going to be working in decimals if anything. So we move on to plan B. Since our fractions don't just scale up nicely, and plan B is to remember that ratios and proportions are really just fancy fractions. So I'm going to look at my fraction and notice, I can divide 40 and 10 by something really basic. Or sorry, just gave it away. Divide 40 and 100 by 10 and have 4 over 10. And then how do we get from 10 to 60? By multiplying by 6. So 4 times 6 gives us 24 parts. All right, so that was our plan B, remembering that ratios are fancy fractions and we can simplify if we need to. Okay, our last one. Andrew's neighborhood has a little library with 60 books. I might write above that, that's a total. If he has read 40% of the books, how many has he read? All right, I know my bottom is always going to be a total, and in this case, we're talking about total books. The top part is what I need to figure out next. How many he has read. He has read 40%, which is a part, so I'm going to put read out of total books. The first number we come across is 60, and we already noted that that's a total, so I'm just going to match it up right here. Then the next number we have is 40%, and immediately I'm thinking percents are out of 100, so that means I need to have 40 and 100 making a connection. If we accidentally place 40 right here, we would do a little self-check, right? 40 over 60 is not the same as 40% because percents are out of 100, right? Sound like a broken record, but that's all there is to it. 40 out of 100. Then the question is, how many books has he read? So we keep it simple. Can we go from what we know to what we don't? It doesn't look like it either way. So again, simplify. And I love when my numbers end in 0 because I'm just going to knock off a 0. Divide by 10, utilizing your base 10 system. Then go from what you know to what you don't. We can very easily get from 10 to 60 times 6, and we end up with 24. So he has read 24 books. Okay, so takeaways for today. Working with percentage proportions, utilizing information we already know. Label, label, label. What's your part and what's your whole or your total? Remembering that percents are out of 100, and then noticing, can you scale up? And if not, moving to your plan